IVM.
On today's rebroadcast, we have Aakrit Vaish from Haptic. Aakrit is one of the leaders in AI and chatbots, and we have a really interesting conversation about kind of future that we're seeing in that space.
All right. Hey, welcome to Shunya 1, everyone. And I'm your host, Shiladitya. This is episode 18, and here we are again. I'm at Shiladitya on Twitter, and joined in the studio with me is my co-host, Amit Doshi.
Hey, how are you?
And he's the co-founder of IndusVox Media, which brings you this podcast and a whole bunch of others. Where can we find you on Twitter, Amit?
Sure, my Twitter is Doshi Amit.
Great. And our guest today, yet another founder from the Mumbai ecosystem of entrepreneurs, one of the very few, and thankfully some of us are still left, is Aakrit Vaish. How are you, Aakrit?
Good, how are you?
Welcome to the show.
I know, I'm excited.
Yeah, and Aakrit, as some of you may know, is the founder of Haptic, which is this awesome chat app, which we're going to talk a lot about. Where do we find you on Twitter, Haptic? Akrit.
Yeah, it can be confusing. Sometimes I get called Haptic because of the similarity in the name. You can find me at Vaish, Aakuvaish.
Nice. Great. So, I mean, since you mentioned it yourself, let me ask you about the name. Is it anything to do with how your name sounds?
No, actually. I mean, I do have a co-founder, so, I don't think he would have liked it if I would have said, hey, listen, I want to name something that sounds like my name. No, we actually, among all the products and companies that we've worked started, pretty bad at naming things in general. So when we started this thing, we knew that we wanted to name it something that would lead to this question, right? Okay, listen, what is this? What does it actually mean? And we also wanted it to be simple. We also wanted to be, something that could become lots of things tomorrow. So we put about 100, words on a Google sheet, all of us.
Wow, you went to 100, huh?
Yes, some of them are really weird.
Yeah, some of the weird ones. Let's hear them.
There was Swapan will kill me when he hears this. Swapan's my co-founder. So one of the ones that he put was actually something called as BLIT, B-L-I-T. It doesn't mean anything actually. So we went to the dictionary to see does this exist? And it did not. And then, it was pretty embarrassing for him when he was just starting a company, right? That, oh God, I got the first thing wrong. So, and there was all over the place. We named a bunch. And there was 3-4 of us actually working on this part back then. Somebody put, HAPTIC.
Right.
And HAPTIC or haptics is the study of touch, sense,
right,
and broadly non-verbal communication.
Yeah.
And we said, oh, look, that sounds cool. That sounds like
it's a winner.
Yeah, that sounds like advanced, futuristic technology. And then as trend was back then, convert everything to a K. So, we changed the last letter from a C to a K. And we liked the sound. We liked the fact that it was 2 syllables. We liked that, it had a happy tone to it. The logo actually looked pretty good as well. The couple of first few versions that we made. So, yeah, we went with that.
Nice. I mean, I actually like it. I think it's the only other company I know after Hipcask, which starts with an H and ends with a K.
Yeah,
too.
coincidentally.
Yeah.
No, Hipcask is a company run by you.
Yes. Which is pretty cool. Yeah. I just want to plug that.
Yeah, sure.
That's what we entrepreneurs do. We always look for
a
way to plug something or the other. Yeah. But hey, great. So, I mean, I want to actually talk about what you've been doing all this while as well, because just to give everyone a little context on how you got to the haptic part of the journey. And we were talking earlier that you actually started off in the Bay Area at a very interesting time, right? Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there is some very interesting background. So I did my, I'm an original Bombaiya, as it used to be called back then. Now it's Mumbaikar. And I went for my undergrad to the US, to University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Interestingly, I'm plugged for my college over here. Very few people know this, but the largest alumni of our college outside of the Illinois area is the Bay Area.
Uh-huh.
And YouTube founders come from UFI. Most Max Levkin was from actually our college, which meant that a lot of the PayPal mafia actually comes from University of
Nice.
Illinois. Mark Andreessen is University of Illinois.
Wow.
LinkedIn, Jeremy Stoppelman is that's Yelp. Jeremy Stoppelman is Illinois. A lot of the core LinkedIn founding team is Illinois. So when we were in college anyway, right, we used to have a lot of these guys come back. And that time, we didn't know, or I didn't know I wanted to work in tech. But it was just good to hear these stories that, by the way, Larry Ellison is a dropout from Illinois. So
Nice.
we used to keep hearing these tech stories and how it was so how it was so much in technology, and there was so many interesting tech companies born out of there. Fast forward, I got a job in consulting right out of college. That was in college. Very quickly realized that not something that I was enjoying so much. Met a really good bunch of people, but just wasn't as much fun as I thought it would be. And that's when the Bay Area thing happened, where for the consulting bit, I was based in California and living in San Francisco. This was year 2009. The App Store launched in 2008. And during this time, no matter where you would step foot into any kind of Bay Area establishment, all you would hear is apps. All you would find next to you is people building apps or building businesses around apps, building analytics, advertising. It almost felt so incestuous that you were like, all right, what's going on? Like, am I missing out on something in life? And that's where that desire started.
And back home, we still had Blackberries.
Yes.
Most
In
of
2008, 9, yeah.
We were just
Blackberries,
discovering.
and we were using the Nokia.
Oh, yeah, we were still in Nokia. You would know better.
Yes, we were the Nokia.
No, actually 2009 and 10 was BlackBerry era. The reason I know this is because me being in Bay Area, and then let's say all my friends in India or elsewhere, when I used to argue with them that, guys, why are you guys still using BlackBerry? I used to get like this death face. Ki, you don't use a BlackBerry, you use an iPhone. Who uses an iPhone, right? You're not on BBM. Oh my God, how am I going to get in touch with you?
BBM,
The
oh
BBM,
my God.
Yeah, the BBM arguments were massive and lazy.
Yeah, and I was like an outcast. Like
Same
I
here.
had no friends left at one point. because I was-
BBM, you judged someone who was not on BBM.
I wasn't. I've never been on BBM. I don't know how to use BBM.
I never understood that whole pin thing.
Yeah.
The pin which everybody used to share with each other, because I never used it, so I had no idea what that meant.
That's what we say about snap codes now.
I don't understand Snapchat either. I
See?
guess I'm ignorant.
yeah. That's why you're doing a podcast, actually. But anyway, so this is exactly when the whole BBM thing was going on, and I was like, guys, iPhone is where it's at, because that's what I keep hearing all the time, and it was literally, for the lack of better words, a crazy time in the Bay Area that time. Like there was big founders or ex-founders of companies building apps. There was kids out of college building apps. There was people who were not building apps were trying to do something with apps, which is either build an analytics tool or an advertising tool. And that's kind of what got me addicted, or at least got me excited about the space.
Nice. So how did that story start? How did Flurry happen, and how did that actually come about?
Yeah.
Because that was where you were before you jumped onto the haptic bandwagon yourself.
Yeah. So that was the start of the journey of perseverance, which I think entrepreneurship gives you a very real version of. And I think that's the Flurry was the start, where actually Flurry at the time was, I think, a 15% company. So no job boards, no career website. We know that, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Nothing at all. And there's this random Indian dude walking around saying he wants to work for Flurry. So the reason I found Flurry was because they did some great PR around the analytics they did. They did a lot of, and the work seemed really interesting. Like it really felt like, look, this is a great platform to do a lot of things. Give some context. Flurry was a company at that time that built analytics tools for app developers.
Right.
So it was trying to be the Google Analytics of mobile apps. And it seemed very, very intuitively like this is going to be interesting. They were the largest at the time. So basically the way I went about it was I stalked them, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I found what was the next event where somebody from the Flurry team was speaking. I bought a ticket for that, skipped work. I hope ex managers are not hearing this, because that time I said I was sick. We all get that now.
Sure.
When we were running teams. So skipped work, stalked them. The guy, when he finished his panel discussion or whatever, stood in line, went met him, said that I want to work at this company. I feel you guys are doing some really exciting work. Can I get your email? Sent him my resume, did not respond. Luckily, I got his number. So hounded him. That time there was no WhatsApp or anything, so just had to call, right?
Yeah.
Old school of
Yeah.
calling.
Yeah.
Remember those days? I would just call, and finally one day he answered. He's like, "Yeah, why don't you come and let's grab coffee?" And that's kind of where it all started. And it was fun.
And that was actually, so I've been a user of Flurry, like even when I started making apps, and I know it was something which it's a very tech and dev sort of a feature, right? I mean, even back then, Flurry was never a consumer product for a general consumer. It was a B2B platform.
It was an analytics plan.
Yeah.
It was an analytics
And
plan.
and it was growing. It was growing like in leaps and bounds, and everyone was using it, and even till date, I mean, there are still so many like them now. I mean, over the years, I think they were the guys pioneers of this space.
Yeah.
And I remember that even though Google Analytics did exist, it wasn't maybe designed natively for mobile apps and so on, but it did exist at the time. What made Flurry sort of stand out? What do you think? Like, what made it stand out from all the other guys who were in that space? And why did all of us, like the rest of the ecosystem, like embrace it so much, do you think?
Yeah, great question. So one, same question that I used to ask when I was inside Flurry, that, okay, listen, what have you guys done that, has gotten us to this stage? No matter what business you do, one thing I've learned, and Gyan plug coming up, one thing I've learned is that, focus is just extremely important. And, even if it is as narrow as, I want to, maximize the number of people who check cricket scores on my, website, even if it is that narrow, right? It just, you have to be extremely focused, and you have to be more focused when you're very early. Yeah. Because by design, you don't have as many resources, right? So you can't do everything. So with Flurry, I think they really just, were obsessed about building great analytics tools for developers. Like, they really just said that we don't know anything else. We'll figure out business tomorrow. We'll make it free, right? This has to be a product that should be free. And we should build a tool that does really well at analytics for mobile apps, because Google Analytics does not do it. Google Analytics does web and then something else, and they've converted it to mobile. So Flurry was just obsessed with that. And then they did really great content marketing around it. Which was PR. They were very active in the San Francisco Bay Area, dev circles. They would just do a lot of developer evangelism that come use it. And, when you were using Flurry, you would have known, developer community is very tight.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
The moment
one person uses something, everybody uses it.
Everybody uses it, right? And most communities actually are very tight. But developer communities, once something is...
We're very codependent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, if a platform has caught on, I mean, every other guy immediately starts to embrace it. But
I think every developer that I know, including my partner, has learned their way up from Stack Overflow.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
That was what I was referencing.
That's what was in my head as well,
right? So you would, if you have a problem, like, you just go to Stack Overflow and type in literally exactly the problem you have, and you'll find an answer.
Yep.
Now imagine back in the day, if you would keep asking, hey, I need an analytics tool for mobile apps, you would always, Flurry would show up.
Right.
Because it just became, one of those sort of viral loops. And that's when, I think that's what really differentiated the company in the early stages. And with zero actually paid marketing, I think we got to 100,000 developers using Flurry Analytics.
Wow. That's a big number. And at the same time, you saw that happening in India too. I mean, India, like you said, maybe caught on with Flurry quite a bit later, right?
Yeah, at that time there were very few companies building mobile apps in India. At that time the smartphone market for India itself was low as well. So anybody who was building it for
the
global market, which meant that either they had offices globally so that they would work with the US office. But yeah, let's say for example, Reliance Entertainment, Robosoft, SourceBits, these guys were customers of Flurry even back then.
Yeah. When did you make the whole transition then? When did you jump to handling more of the India scene?
So it came from a personal desire where basically, these are a lot of the things that I've learned from the Flurry founders, the Flurry CEO, and the Flurry management about how to run a company, right? So after about a year in, a little less than a year in, I had this thing that, okay, look, what's next for me? And this has been really a lot of fun. But where do I see myself? The 24-year-old kind of question, right? That where do I see myself in 5 years? What dent will I make?
The questions before you turned 30 were so different.
Yeah.
After that, it's a whole different set.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you're right, man. I'm just thinking about the questions that I ask these days. Yeah, but yeah, before this is like young and am I doing enough with my life and what's next? And I always coming from the background that I came from. I was just telling you right before this that I came from a family where my dad always had a business, something or the other. He was a serial entrepreneur in his days, actually.
Wow.
He did steel and then textile and a little bit of other stuff as well. So for me, actually, the concept of a job was very alien till I got to college. Oh, that's an option also. Really, people actually go and make enough money by doing this thing. And then obviously college then taught me, okay, look, there's a lot more than just out there. So it was always in my mind that, look, at some point because of this the DNA, I'd want to go run a company or do a business. And so then coming back to the transition bit of handling India, so then when I was thinking about what's next for me, I was okay, look, the path has to be to run a company and run a business. And because I was from here, and this was now 2011, when Flipkart just raised a bunch of money.
So the start of the start.
Start of the start. Ola just raised their first round. There was like, okay, startup happening, a lot of conferences. I always say this story because it's funny, right? So to do my pre-research, okay, look, is this a market I want to work in? I came to Bangalore on a break from San Francisco. I went to an event called Unplugged.
Oh, wow.
In Bangalore, which was...
I went to that one too, yeah.
Which was 2010. There were 120 people over there, hosted by Ashish Sinha, and I met him that time, first time. And, there was 120 people, and out of the 120, there was about 15-20 of us who just kind of, just started talking. They were Krishna Mehra from Capillary, Pallav Nadhani from Fusion Charts, Sharad Bottaraju from Mobstack, Alok Kejriwal from Games to Win, and at least Naveen Tiwari from InMobi, and there was at least 5-7 others, right? And that was a full ecosystem.
That's it. That was actually it back then, yeah.
And I had no idea. I thought, I'm sure there'll be like 500 more like this, right?
Yeah.
And I was just visiting. And I was like, oh, this is great. If these are just 5-7, there's probably 100 more like this out here. And I said, this event is good. It's just starting to pick up, and you're going to see if this is the first or second event of its kind, then this really seems like a market. And for the same reason why everybody comes here or puts money here, that billion people, kuch na kuch to hona chahiye.
Exactly. Something going.
Yeah. So then I developed a thesis I want to move to India, where I see a future to build, some exciting companies in the future or exciting opportunities. And basically I went to my CEO and I said, I want to move to India. I'd like to see if we can make something work for Flurry, because I do want to continue for some time. I think there's a business opportunity. If you think that's not an option, then let's talk. I think within 2 minutes, you're like, okay, cool. Let's do it. and that time our CEO was a guy called Simon, and if anybody hears this, they'll know exactly what I'm saying, because that's how he would talk. He would just like, okay, cool, let's do it. And then I was like, all right, cool. Then what's next? We'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And then it was funny. 2 months later, I went to him and like, oh, Simon, so what's the plan? He's like, oh, you really want to go? I thought he was just joking. No, actually, this is real. He's like, okay, cool. So we figured it out. And then the deal was that I would start the Flurry India office. We would start with 2 operations over here. Customer support, obviously, because anyway, let's move on. And then ad operations, which actually also we felt would be a good idea to do here because of the global market, right? So even though Flurry was based in San Francisco, we had a lot of customers in Asia, a lot of large publishers in Asia, Chinese guys, European guys. So we started with those 2 functions with the idea that, look, if the Indian market looks interesting, let's do some business there as well.
Nice. And that was set up in Bombay, huh?
That was set up in Bombay in Andheri West.
Wow. I mean, I think it's great that thankfully you were based here, because that's what made it get set up over here. Otherwise, anyone in your place would have gone to Bangalore.
Yeah,
even back then.
We didn't have a tech requirement, right. So that's why it made it a lot easier to do it out of Bombay. I think for us also, because the requirement initially was just do like a 15-20% shop. Wasn't so you could go anywhere. I think obviously Flurry took a different path, but if the Flurry operation would have grown, we would have moved Bangalore or Pune.
Nice. And what kind of early customers did you actually see? Like Indian paying customers? Who are the Indian paying Flurry customers?
What was Vishal Gondal's company? India Games.
Okay.
India
So the
Games.
gaming side.
Flurry as a company, biggest customers were gaming. I mean, when Supercell would send a push notification, our servers would be like, what happened? Supercell gave some contest, Clash of Clans.
Correct.
And they were by far the biggest customers. And Zynga was a big customer back in the Bay Area. Words with Friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had all analytics on Words with Friends. I would go every day and see how many MAU, how many DAU today.
Wow. Yeah, see, that's the interesting side of a product analytics company also. And you get to see the rise and falls of other products which use you, and it gives you a whole different kind of insight into user behavior, right? After all, it's all human behavior which
what's working,
you're trying
what's not working, you'll be able to get like much deeper insights than like a person would without that kind of information.
And or even if you're just doing one kind of product, you're able to see across multiple kinds of products and behaviors, times of day, days of however you want to crisscross the data.
It was for, like I said, the 24, 23-year-old, just done 1 year work, dream come true. I mean, I was actually like, shouldn't there be some like restrictions to who sees this stuff? Like, what if I just like spreadsheet this out and send it to some people, right? But a startup, right? So obviously the trust element is very high, and that's why they bring you onto the team. But actually, to your point, that is what led to Haptic.
Yeah.
Because the one category that whenever I used to look at data was just hockey stick ke alawa, if there's some another option was messaging. Right. Back in 2010, right? WhatsApp was just blowing up.
Yeah.
And then that time, actually, besides WhatsApp, there were 8 other apps only in the US that were growing as fast and as big.
Really? Actually, WhatsApp was never so big in the US until later.
And out of our entire data set, which included gaming, which included all different types of apps, out of the top 20 were 8 messaging apps by engagement.
Wow.
And that was like, wait.
There's something there.
There's something there.
Yeah.
There was WhatsApp. There was an app called Text Free. There was an app called Text Plus. There was an app. Everything with aage piche text dal do matlab.
Right.
Art does apps.
And these were all independent platforms.
3-person shops, 5-person shops. WhatsApp was back then 12 people. They're still 60.
And while iMessage was growing on one side, and while everything else was happening,
iMessage came a lot later, actually. iMessage came 2012 almost. This is 2010, 2011, where it was just crazy. I mean, there was one of the messaging developers based in Canada, right? There were like 4 people, and I think they had 8 million DAU.
Wow.
8 million daily active users at the time.
And none of these guys are around now.
So some of them still are, actually.
Yeah.
Not as, obviously, they haven't created as much impact as, let's say, WhatsApp. Some of them are still around, and they're still doing millions DAU give and take range. They've identified certain audience sets that really work for them. So whether some guys specialize in teenagers, some maybe in adult, some maybe in different categories. So some of them are niche ones are around, but yeah, I mean, in the Western world, WhatsApp has taken pretty much.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a network effect, no?
Yeah, once you start using it, then everybody.
And all your friends need to be on it. And then in the Asian world, as WeChat and Line, that has taken up kind of everything. So,
correct.
So that actually was the start of, okay, look, I'm going to do something in messaging, right? This is like something, right? Because this seems like a very intuitive, natural interface for the smartphone, because everybody is just using these things.
Yeah, and I mean, the phone is no longer a phone to talk. It's basically a phone to text.
Yeah, that was the first slide that Simon, again, from Flurry, presented at one of our conferences, which was that the amount of time you would spend inside messaging apps was about 7 times more than you would spend on calling.
I think that number might even seem low today.
Yeah, this is back
Yeah,
then, right?
I mean, like today it feels like I talk on the phone like maybe 5 minutes a day.
But on WhatsApp,
But I'm on
like
WhatsApp
3-4
or
hours.
Slack
Yeah.
or something like that just constantly. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that was back then, and exactly right. So the phone was the primary function of the phone was to text.
Right.
Now I think camera is pretty big as well. because
course.
But
Yeah.
that time it was all text. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think Instagram also had a similar inflection point around the same time, just after the first or second iPhone version.
I think iPhone 3G, no? That's when Instagram
3G.
took off.
4, I think.
4?
Yeah, I think
Was 4?
I think
4
around
is when it
3G,
took off.
4
Yeah.
around that time frame is when the same.
The
inflection.
camera was
It's almost-
significantly better.
Yeah.
There was that one upgrade. There was one particular camera that just got so much better.
Can't believe we're on almost the 10th year of the
Yeah, the
iPhone.
10th one is coming out right now, right? This is
2007.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
By the time you hear this, there might be a new iPhone.
There probably will be.
Oh, actually, yeah, it's September.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
God, the
next-
year is almost going to get over.
It's on
Yes.
Tuesday,
Where
right?
did this go? 2017. When did this?
Has
Where
gone
did you
fast.
go? Yeah.
It has
But
gone fast.
That's great. I mean, I think I totally agree with you when seeing a similar trend, obviously sitting here in India all the years which you just mentioned. And like I said, I was also probably at that same Unplugged or the one after or
Yeah,
whichever.
yeah.
And I think the ecosystem was building up, and like you said, and definitely texting was on the rise, WhatsApp was on the rise. And I think now is when we are seeing a final coalescing of all of these technologies and data access and everything, where it's a big bang time. So I think we're going to chat some more about that. We're going to take a break and come back and hear about what the insides of haptic are.
Cool. Awesome.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please make sure that you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So this week on Instagram, we asked everybody to tell us about their New Year's resolutions, and we had some really interesting interactions with our audience based on that. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, do check us out. On The Scene and the Unseen, Amit Verma talks to Congress MP Shashi Tharoor about his new book, The Paradoxical Prime Minister. They chat about holding politicians to their promises, the paradoxes of Indian politics at large, and what the 2019 elections might have in store. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by the habit coach Ashton Doctor, who talks about the importance of healthy habits, simple tricks to meditate, and his new podcast, The Habit Coach. Speaking of The Habit Coach, in a 3-part series, Ashton shares his golden secrets to achieving New Year resolutions. On the Pragati podcast, Pawan is joined by Dr. Jay Prakash Narayan. They discuss India's success and failures as a republic and a democracy. On Tale Harate, legal expert Alok Prasanna Kumar discusses the Supreme Court judgment on Aadhaar and its implication on citizens. On Geek Fruit, Tejas, Jishnu and Dinkar do a recap of their favorite films from 2018. And on IVM Likes, Janam, Surbi and Abbas give out some cool pop culture recommendations and discuss the new Netflix horror movie Bird Box, starring Sandra Bullock. And with that, let's get you back to your show.
Hey, welcome back. So, we've been having a fun chat about Aakrit's life story so far and all the cool stuff he got to see at Flurry, and a whole bunch of data which you got to understand in terms of the kind of apps that were growing. And like you said, texting, right? Texting was and is still huge. So let's get into, when you started Haptic, what vision, and it's been a while. How many years?
4
is it?
years.
4 years now. So 4 years, it's obviously evolved in various shapes and forms.
Correct.
So the stuff you started with and the stuff it is today.
And the stuff is going to become tomorrow.
And which is going to become tomorrow. So how was it? What was the initial vision behind it? And where did you see that journey going?
Yeah, so the thesis was very simple, which draws from what we ended the last conversation on before the break, that messaging is going to rule the world. Right? That's going to become your de facto platform or de facto interface for the smartphone. And everything that you do on a smartphone will at some shape or form go through a messaging interface. That really was the thesis. Now the question was, what use cases, how do you approach it, how do you go case by case? That's where we started working on the sort of V1 to 5 and now what's going to happen in the future. If you ask me, honestly, when we started out Haptic, what we ultimately thought would become of it is fairly similar to what has become today.
Mm-hmm.
And also actually fairly similar to what is going to become tomorrow. So I don't think there's been too much like logic that's gone into designing. There's not been too much logic that's gone into achieving the original vision. We've accidentally ended up
Achieving.
I think at the original vision. So I don't think
Nice.
I don't think I'd like to call myself कि नहीं जो मैंने plan किया था वो achieve किया. I
No,
think
but that's never the case, right? You have to go with what works now, what works next week.
correct. So it's always iterative. But I think
kind of does speak to the fact that your original vision was pretty clear in terms of where you wanted the thing to go, though, right?
Yeah, I think iteratively,
Yeah.
we've landed up today and tomorrow rather becoming what we, I think, started out with.
Yep.
The first use case that we started solving was, that's what I'm saying that we've ended up, right? The first use case we started solving was customer service. So Haptic 1.0 was an app that basically allowed you to send a message and saying, my Vodafone plan is incorrect.
Right.
Can you help me? We had very little bot, but mostly all human actually responding back saying, yes, I can help you. Give me your details. It was hardcore manual, grungy, startup-y stuff where the guy would take your request, then call Vodafone, respond back, and then handle the request.
Nice.
Right?
Basically taking you saw what was happening on Twitter and you said, hey, let me try and help that a bit.
I remember the first time I used it was to ask, where can I get the cheapest Moto X? And they gave me the answer, Flipkart, and I bought it from Flipkart. I remember that was the first...
Yeah, you're talking about V3 now.
I don't know, but that was the first time I used it. I mean, to ask that question, where can I get the Moto X cheapest?
Yeah, so the first version was the maximum queries you would get is, hey, my credit card is not working, my PIN is not working, my mobile phone provider has a problem. Can I activate DND? Can I activate DND on my mobile phone?
Was a big question.
Top 3.
Are you serious?
How do I activate DND? I'm getting calls from everybody all the time. And that time DND was also new, no?
Yeah.
That time not many people knew how to do DND. So can I
And initially it was DND was also you had to go to each one and do it individually, right? Rather than just have a single DND list. There was something like that. You had to call Airtel
That was a
separately.
block.
No. That was a block.
Okay.
Let's say I'm a Vodafone customer.
Right.
If I send a message to Vodafone and I'm saying activate DND, then Vodafone is supposed to whitelist my number with Try. Okay. Now Try has my number saying that you cannot get spam SMS anymore or spam calls.
Right.
Now if I do get a spam SMS or call which I have not signed up for, I can complain to Try.
Yeah.
And then Try can then go behind you saying
That happens till this day.
It does. Yeah.
Even today, people are just like posting on Twitter again that, hey, look, this message I got. I think I've done it.
Do you want to go into the grey area intricacies of what happens today?
No, it-
Yeah.
Please.
This is
enlighten us.
digressing a little bit.
No,
but
let's
I'll-
digress away, man.
Yeah, but I'll
It's
tell you
interesting, yeah.
I'll tell you what happens today. So here's what happens today. So now, when the government or Try started this, there were two kinds of SMSs that any company could send out: promotional and transactional.
Correct.
Right? Promotional are of course SMSs that will go out to all numbers that have not signed up for DND.
Right.
So if you're not on DND, you should get spam. That was the thesis. And if you want to get off it, then message karo DND. And transactional was only given rights to specific types of companies after reviewing their templates, which were banks, credit cards, operators, and all of that.
This is still the way they do it, right? It's
Yeah.
still these two
I'll tell you
rules.
the edit. So now, obviously, as life has proved it over 70 years and plus, that Indian entrepreneurs are a lot smarter than what Try or the operators can imagine. So what companies started doing was that they started creating templates in a way that would seem transactional, get them approved,
Right.
but they were actually not transactional and they were promotional. And they were being spammed. Then basically Try came back and said, hey, why are you doing this? So companies started saying the reason I'm doing it is because the SMSs I'm sending out, sure, they're not transactional in nature, but these are all my customers. So I've signed up. So let's say you signed up for, a service, right? And that service wants to send you a message saying, hey, I'm launching a new store. I'm launching a new product. How do I do it?
Yeah.
Right? You're not allowing me because it's on DND, but this is my customer. So the government says that, okay, fair point, guy. We see your point. So let's create a new category now, which is called transactional opt-in.
Okay.
So now we have a new category that is actually called transactional opt-in, where the logic is that as long as this customer has signed up with you and given his consent that you can send him SMSs, you can send it to him. Now,
That right there, you have so much gap in that, right?
Now, just think about how many services you might have given your phone number to and signed up
Exactly.
in the last 3 months.
Inadvertently.
Inadvertently, right? How?
No, it's not like it says over there, right? If you by signing up for
It
this, and
probably
that, you're
does.
going to-
Probably does. We don't read it.
It does not.
Boilerplate,
It does
yeah.
not. It's TNC
Yeah.
hidden. Like,
Yeah.
it's all deep. Like, even if you try and find it in TNC, you're not going to find
Exactly.
it. It's so deep, right? So, which is why you feel today again, or let's say over the last 2-3 years since they started, why so many people have started again complaining. Spam.
Yeah.
But no, at some point, this is not going to get proven at TRAI, because when you submit to TRAI, TRAI will come back and say, this has been sent by this guy who you signed up with, and this is proof that you signed up with him in 2016.
Wow.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
the...
this is going to be such
Actually, there was a point where the phone number became like a very frivolous identity.
Yeah.
It's like you literally gave your number to anyone and
Yeah.
everyone at some point, and you still do today.
I still do. I don't. So I mean, like, I don't look at SMSs at all. If somebody sends me an SMS at this point in time, I assume it's rubbish. I mean, like.
But you probably opted in.
No.
probably opted
Even
in.
people, right? So I mean, like, there is this one problem I constantly face, that people with iPhones, they use iMessage, right? And I don't use an iPhone. So when you send me a message using iMessage, I get it as an SMS. I don't see those messages for the longest time because I never look at my SMSs.
Yeah, but you're talking about probably people who don't live in this country.
No, even
Nobody
people-
uses iMessage here.
Everybody, I
They
get
do?
it from people all the time over here.
okay.
Well, at least maybe my friends. I don't know, but I mean, like, I get it
People
from
who are
people
still like in that era of
Yeah.
BBM.
Yeah.
here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the iMessage
Oh, we
is the
don't
new
need
BBM.
a pin now. Yeah.
But wow, man. So
Yeah.
seriously, DND was one of your top 3 queries.
Yeah, so DND was one of our top 3 queries back then. We started with this V1 of, look, customer service is painful. Then, like I said, we'd always thought that the natural evolution to this would be what Amit mentioned, some form of, search of product, right? That people will want to know, where do I find this, where do I find that, lot of local search, lot of product search,
Right.
how do I do this, how do I do that? And that started happening organically. Now, here's the point which becomes interesting. When you give a free-form chat platform to people in our country, you get lots of interesting requests, and you get to learn a
Look
lot.
at the euphemisms, right?
Yeah.
Interesting requests.
You get to learn a lot about the psychology and demographic of our country and what they are interested in, and you quickly realize that I am not someone who lives in this country. I have to think.
and I want to know about this because I agree with you on that initially as a V1 or V2 of the product, I probably didn't use it back then because I thought I can do this faster myself.
Yeah.
Because we were all early adopters and we were all people who knew where to find
Correct.
stuff maybe.
Correct.
But there were a ton of people, and you know this, who actually were talking to you guys
All the time. And
about all sorts of things, right?
Everything. We actually back then, we had a couple of people who said, can you change my credit card billing address? Okay. We said, there's some boundaries we can't cross. We said, you know what, we can't do that because of regulation, legal issues and all of that. I can't take your credit card details on my chat and then do it for you. That's a little sketchy. Like, you should, not
Yeah,
to
you
beware of
shouldn't do
that.
that.
He said, no, I'm okay. I trust you. Here's my credit card number. Here's the expiry. Here is the current billing address. Can you please call up Citibank and do it? And I remember Swapan, my co-founder, freaking out. He's like, "How I can't have these messages in the system? Like, we cannot, because we're not encrypted. V1 mein kya encryption?
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We're not encrypted. Nothing is going on." So I remember we took that chat and we actually did change his billing address because the guy was insistent. He do it
Wow.
for me, and then we deleted the chat. Like, we hard deleted from our servers. Like, you can't find it again. So we had that stuff. We had a lot of requests at night.
Yeah.
Because we were 24/7. So
I really want to know. Listen, please.
where do we draw the line?
There's no line.
in this.
There's no line.
this
I really
podcast.
wanna know.
What's the audience? Is it PG-13? Is it?
No, it's rated NC-17.
Okay, great. But no, there was all types of requests. Then we also did suddenly the in part a mistake, in part a great growth hack. I'd like to call it the latter, which is that we decided to put pictures of our chat assistants on the app.
Wow.
Okay.
And we really were very naive, I think, at that point, where we decided to put all the real pictures of whoever our assistants are, whoever are responding back. There's a bot, but there's humans as well.
Right.
And real meant that there was a bunch of girls whose pictures went on the app. Our engagement shot up. Not because they were coming in to solve requests, but because there was like, I find you very pretty.
Oh my God.
Can I get your phone number? How can I get in touch with you? What time do you work? Isn't it time for you to go home now?
Oh my God.
How much break do you get? Do you get dinner break? It's 9 p.m. When are you going to go for dinner? Please give me your WhatsApp number.
This is incredible. I mean, it's so amazing that
predictable but incredible.
by sheer volume of the diversity in our country, this happens to any platform at some point.
It does.
At some point, if you have pictures on a platform, I think this will happen.
Yeah.
In our country.
I think so.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? So that kind of stuff, a lot of random out of the box stuff which we wouldn't handle, and then so that led to kind of this V3, V4 version where we realized, exactly to your point, that look, no technology back then and even today, right? And that'll go into what we are becoming and what the industry looks like today. No technology except maybe a straightforward search engine is equipped enough to handle such diverse conversations.
Right.
Right. You have to narrow this down. Right. We cannot be like, come and ask and talk to us about anything. We have to get the product really narrow, and we have to figure out a particular type of audience, type of use cases that we really go address. We'll still do it over chat because we're seeing enough conviction that people want to do it over chat.
Right.
It should just be faster and bots should get better. But we should now narrow this down. And that's where V4, V5 and what we have today as a haptic is where we really narrow down our use cases. We made categories. We saying here's travel, here's shopping, here's this, here's that. So people know this is only questions or the conversations related to that topic. We really cut out a lot of stuff that otherwise seemed really cool but could not scale because of simply lack of scale. We only kept categories which we knew we wanted to do for the audience we were going after. So we really made it narrow. And that's when, at least as a business, it started making a lot of sense. Right? And that's where we really started seeing scale like end 2015. Where users started picking up, engagement started holding up. We became a lot more clear about which types of people you want to go after. The funnel became a lot clear. And then a lot of the not nonsense, but nonsensical rather stuff went away from the platform.
So, and I know you focused on being a platform which solves problems, right? After all, it's a search, but it's restricted search to that extent. And again, it's a set of problems which you identified specifically for India. Did you see that there are, and I know this because you have a huge user base now, and you are constantly serving customers who are typically early smartphone users, new smartphone users, new to the internet maybe, or new to the entire world which opens up through a smartphone. And is that the kind of focus area you're choosing to be in?
So I'll tell you,
and hence they are chatting, right?
About a year back at least. So when we first narrowed it down, we did not do a great job of narrowing it down based on here is the audience, here is the market. We narrowed it down actually the reverse way, that we think what are the things that we can do well as a company on chat. Right. So we said that, look, we believe there's enough conviction in chat and that vision, old vision, starting vision still holds. So what are things that can be really well done on chat because they just make chat first type use cases. So we took that direction instead of saying what our audience will want. Then earlier this year, or I would say late last year, is when we went through the exercise that look, now we need to think the reverse, where there are certain types of things that people are asking us to do, or there are certain types of things that people will want us to do because of which they're not sticking today. So we need to add those back in. So that's how the use case bias or selection went. Now, in terms of the type of audience, the type of audience actually is very, and that's one of our challenges today, honestly, is it's very fragmented. We went through multiple exercises at different points of the last 12 months in trying to do user studies, interviews. We speak to like 100 users a week who's liking it for what, who's their audience, all of that. And what we've at least narrowed down is that this is not yet so far a tier 2 product.
Okay.
Not because of anything else, but because for them it's too intimidating.
All right.
That I can just chat and talk. It becomes almost one of those things where this cannot be real.
Okay.
Right? It becomes one of those things where, how can this be fast? What information does this person have? Does he know all about me? What if I tell him where I'm flying? Will he track me?
Right.
Okay.
Right?
So-
Will the bot know that, I'm actually flying there? Or if there's a human who's manning the chat, will he know all of that? So for them, it was a way too intimidating technology to say, look, I'll get used to it. And part 2 is that we don't have local language support.
Okay.
So then that becomes a little tough. So I just kind of a question that occurs to me based on what you're saying. What percentage of your interaction is bot driven and what percentage is human driven? I mean, like, is that something you're comfortable speaking about?
Absolutely. I'm comfortable and proud to say that 95% is now bot driven.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
We spent a lot of time 2016.
Okay.
That's 1 year last year in getting a technology to a point where the bot is doing all the work and 5% is going through people who are actually looking at the chats.
So one other thing that kind of occurs to me based on the fact that it's so bot driven, how are you guys looking at machine learning and AI type stuff for the bot itself, or are you looking at this as primarily like the way as like a kind of a question to answer kind of this?
No, it's all AI driven.
AI driven.
Obviously, AI. AI.
When did you buy the domain?
AI.
When did you buy the .ai domain?
A while back, actually. We didn't get .com, and we still haven't got it. I still can't afford it. It's about, so the last price I got was 50 grand. And because we're a mobile company, that investment doesn't make sense, even if I was to have that money, right? So we got everything else: haptic.in, haptic.co, haptic.ai, hapticapp.com, hapticapp.in, haptic.mobi, hapticapp. All of like 500 rupees. They might as well buy 12 of those, invest like $6,000. So we bought all of those way back. But to answer your AI question, AI. It's just the flavor of the season. I'm just messing. It's a little bit of a sarcastic undertone on the fact that everything is AI now.
That's true.
And to have .ai is, very, very important for companies.
for in your pitch deck.
In your pitch deck and everywhere. Anyway, but no, so I'll tell you very quickly what we think is AI and, being very honest of what level of AI we do. Right? AI in its true sense is actually that, which is, can machines be intelligent enough to understand what you're doing and help you do something on the other, right? It's a very abused term now where people think everything is AI. AI has various different subdivisions to it. Robotics is part of AI, machine learning is part of AI, linguistics is part of AI, natural language processing is part of AI, data analytics and big data is part of AI. We actually think that whereas we fall as somewhere in that AI bucket because we do a lot of natural language processing.
Okay.
So that's the area we focus on, which is when someone types, how can we interpret it and respond back? Honestly, though, are we doing the most cutting edge AI work in the world? Absolutely not.
Right.
Cutting edge AI for me is like robotics.
Right.
Cutting edge AI for me is like, what Alexa may try to do. And I don't think there's any company in India that does cutting edge AI. Cutting edge AI requires an upfront investment of at least $1 million because it requires time to understand, right? We're happy working in a smaller subset of AI, which is natural language processing, and that's what we do.
Interesting. You mentioned Alexa. What do you think of like this Microsoft and Alexa thing working together? I mean, like, do you look at stuff like that as something that you would want to kind of also... Do you see that as a thing, right? I mean, like, where all these different assistants are
we coming back to voice?
No, I mean, like, but the idea is...
Oh my God.
The
I
idea
have to
is,
talk to my phone again?
No. My question is more around the idea that, these are two different kind of competing assistants, which is what Haptic is too, right? Haptic is an assistant. It's a text-based assistant as opposed to a voice-based assistant, but still, it's an assistant, right? So, I mean, like, these guys are, they're going to be working together on kind of making their things work together. I mean, like, is that something, what do you think of that as a development?
Love it. Yeah. So I'll tell you, by my math, which I do fairly often on this one, the number of unique people who would have used an assistant of any kind, chat, voice, text, whatever, right? So combination of Siri, Cortana, and by use I mean not like just like Siri tell me a joke,
Right.
Or like
A genuine use.
yeah, like actually use it for like completing a task assistant. By my math, is not more than 10 million in the world.
Okay.
I use it to find what song is playing. That's my most common use case, and setting alarms.
Yeah, and
Setting
like,
alarms. Yeah, remind
and
me to
like-
do this at this time, or remind me to
Yeah.
do this when I get here.
and like 3 of us are probably like the
Yeah,
most,
fairly
like-
early adopters.
Yeah, like we are like guys who don't exist, So 10 million, right?
Yeah.
Now, out of a population of global population of give and take 7 billion,
Right.
That's very, very small.
Yeah.
Which means now for a company that is still relatively a startup, right, with limited resources, for us, any development by somebody who has a lot of money and big companies is amazing,
Right.
Because that means they're investing in the space.
Right.
That means they care about the space. That means that they're going to double down and build APIs around the space, right?
Right.
So any development for us, whether it's a Cortana and a Alexa starting to talk to each other, WhatsApp doing WhatsApp businesses, is excellent for us, and we want these companies to do a lot more. We want them to open up platforms which we can build on top of. And more investment and resource that will go in will only make our cause better.
Well, that actually, you brought up the WhatsApp business thing. That actually seems really like a great
Yeah, I was
place for
ac-
you to sit on, right?
I was
mean, like-
actually going to ask...
Sure, that was on the agenda.
Yeah.
no,
about-
but I mean, like just haptic services through WhatsApp business, right? I mean, like that kind of. if they
No,
build
my
the platform
question
in
is
that way.
actually the other way around. In fact, since you mentioned early on that you saw in your Flare days the rise of text apps, and all of these were network apps, right? They were peer-to-peer texting apps. How come you chose to avoid that direction? Because WhatsApp Business today is essentially a peer-to-peer app which has become now
Correct,
everything. Whereas you remained assistant only, and a one-to-one assistant chat, in not a one-to-many. Like you didn't open up chatting with other friends on haptic. Like was that a conscious decision?
Yeah, so we felt that we were by the time that we got going, or at least the idea came about, that war had been won. So WhatsApp one was fairly sort of out there, and I think they had I think that about 60% of the smartphone market back then, which was smaller in India, but still they had 60% even back then. Now it's like 100% almost. So WhatsApp had pretty much won that battle in India, and globally also that battle had been kind of done. So that was the reason we stayed away. We felt that building out everything out on top of that.
Right.
So just on that point again, we wanted to be the company, and we want to be the company that basically specializes in bots that do everything else except talk to friends and each other.
Right.
Which means that, and whether these sit on haptic, or these sit on WhatsApp tomorrow, or a Messenger tomorrow, or a Slack tomorrow, or a web tomorrow, we'll go wherever the users are, right? But let's say now with WhatsApp coming in, like that's just the best news that could have happened for us, right? Because now they're going to need, let's say, two kinds of things. One, they're going to need a bunch of services on WhatsApp. Now we have like 17 that are out there available.
Right.
Just plug it in. And they're going to also need people to build out, customer service and other kinds of bots for other companies.
Right.
Because they're not going to do this themselves.
Oh, wow, that's a
Yeah,
massive
they just provide the
opportunity,
platform. Yeah.
They provide the platform, and WhatsApp and
Right.
Facebook as companies never actually build. They
They
build some
don't-
tools,
yeah,
but they don't
yeah.
do anything more. And that again, I mean, who has a better bot platform in this part of
Yeah.
the world, or even for that matter, others except us?
Yeah,
Right?
no, that's
So-
actually that's huge.
Yeah, so it is actually we're hoping this turns out to be an inflection point for us also, because as things open up.
Great. So I actually, before we wrap up, I just want to know about, so how did this story in the last few years tie in with, now that you're part of the Times Internet group, how did that tie in with the rest of the vision over there? Because we've spoken to Miten here, and I know TIL is has some lofty ideas, and they're executing on them as well. So how does Haptic tie into that story?
Yeah, so for us, like you said, Miten was here. Miten and I have known each other for now like some 13-14 years. We go back a long way. So I was always aware of what TIL was up to. Just through Miten in terms of what they're doing. The Dine Out acquisition at the time was like great. This makes a lot of sense. A lot of the work they were doing with Ghana back, a lot of the work they were doing with Men's XP back then. So I kept obviously knowing about what's up at TIL. What happened was when the haptic sort of B round fundraise started, we were pitching everywhere, every possible VC that was out there. We were talking to everybody, and then Miten said, "Hey, why don't you have a conversation with Satyan and see kind of if there's a fit over there." And then once we met, I think there were 2-3 things that happened. One is I think we got along as just two companies and individuals. It seemed like we were on the same page in terms of how we think about internet and the business. And the second was I think they felt that there was this services layer that we've built. They could take that and deploy it across the entire network. Right, nice. So you could take, let's say, all the entire 17 different services. Take pieces of those, take all of those, put them in various news apps, put them in various content apps, so that's just all of them become actually transacting users.
Right. Interesting.
And as for Times Internet, as the DNA is still very strong ad tech, transacting users extremely valuable, and that was missing.
Right. That's exactly.
The transaction layer has been missing in Times Internet, and that's kind of why we came together.
Nice. So we'll hope to see some more interesting use cases built out through their network as well.
Yeah, very, very soon actually.
Interesting. Hey, that's great. I think, like I said, right, haptic, and I've seen these small evolutions you guys have gone through, and like you mentioned, this is the ultimate vision which you had even when you started out, and you accidentally came back to that.
No, I full design, proper. Step by step.
It was all part of the plan.
All part of the plan.
But see, that's the great part of building a company. You tend to go in which direction your users tell you to, but hopefully don't stray too far from your own vision. And it's great to see that there's a long road ahead which you guys are building towards. And
yeah. Still, the feeling in the company is day zero.
Nice.
Which is what makes it fun, which is what sort of keeps everybody excited.
And there are only more people jumping on board the chat bandwagon every single day.
It's
the more you go deeper into more languages maybe or whatever.
I think that's going to be huge for you guys, right?
More languages, platforms opening up like WhatsApp, companies wanting chatbots to solve customer service.
Yeah, and that's also, I've got to assume that like for a lot of these companies, most of their answers are the same answer over and over again.
80-20 rule, right?
Yeah,
so 80% of the same 20% type. So so that's happening. Our bet is really on this, on the interface and technology.
We should just stop calling the phone anymore. I don't think people are going to be voice conversing.
Interestingly though, but last year, Mary Meeker's Internet Trends Report, which is like a Bible for all of us who follow internet, her report actually had like 8 slides on voice and how voice search assistant, anything to do with voice.
Voice is the source of
voice
activation.
Is the internet. Sorry, voice is the interface.
Yeah,
voice as an interface is going to become big. And for me, I think there are 2 things that in this broader space that I'm really, really looking forward to over the next 6 months. One is whatever WhatsApp now continues doing.
Yeah.
Right, so they've now opened up the platform. They're doing some bits, and how do they kind of approach that? And the second is, what does Alexa's India version look like?
We're waiting for that. Diwali, apparently.
Very close, yeah, apparently. And actually, a lot of the research team sits in Powai.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you should find somebody over there and try and get them to demo Alexa India.
We should.
My God,
We'll try
Alexa's first podcast. That would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah. Imagine if instead of me or Alexa answering all these questions.
Yeah. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, and Alexa India apparently has some language support as well. So I'm very keen to see what that happens. And yeah, you're right. They're targeting like Diwali.
Diwali time.
Yeah. Pretty interesting. Hey, man, great. I mean, the one last thing which I didn't get to ask you is, I think you also moonlight as an angel investor, don't you?
Ooh, angel investor. Hashtag.
Yes.
That's a plug to make sure more people listen to your podcast.
But no, I remember because again on that same unplugged year when you visited, and probably thereafter a few years, I remember you were pretty active on the angel investing scene, and you still do quite a bit. What's your personal take on how that has panned out for you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the way it kind of happened. The way it happened was that obviously being part of the ecosystem, like we like to call it, and amount of time that all of us spend with each other, you run into some companies that were interesting. Courtesy sort of the Flurry exit and a couple of other things that had happened. There was some capital available to deploy. And I accidentally got into it and started deploying, very small check sizes, 10 to 15 lakhs, into areas that I really got excited about, which meant that if I was to start a company, I would probably also think about this idea because this seems really cool. Not a part of any network, not a part of any group, not a part of any WhatsApp group, which is a lot of them out there for investments. It is all either through people, very strong references that we know, or through the network that come through, or let's say companies who come to me rather, saying that you can add a lot of value from what you've done, which means mobile or bots or chat or advertising, anything related. Through the accidental, again, way of doing this, we've ended up investing in 10 companies, out of which 2 have been sold, 2 have shut down. Remaining 6 continue. Remaining 6 that are about, I would say, 3 that are doing really well, 2 that are continuing on, and 1 that's on life support. So it's a fairly standard pattern.
Steady mix.
Standard pattern.
It seems like a good mix. Better than standard.
Yeah. And significantly reduced it over the last year and a half or 2. Primarily because, again, lessons learned as you grow older and mature that, mind space is more important than physical hours that you spend on something. And I, at least today, want to spend as much mind space as I have only on Haptic because the opportunity is so large.
Nice. Great. So, just to wrap that up, where can people find you and talk to you on Twitter or WhatsApp or wherever you want to be spoken to? Or Haptic. Do you have your own avatar on Haptic?
Can we add you on Haptic?
But a lot of my friends will go into Haptic one day and be like, call Aakrit. Aakrit kidhar hai? Or if, let's say, if some people are not answering and, if the bot is not working well, or let's say an assistant is not solving a request well, I'll complain to Aakrit. I'll let Aakrit know. And then by the way,
the bots probably learned that now.
There is actually an Easter egg there. If you go and ask who is Aakrit, it will respond back with something. I'm going to do it right now.
Let all our listeners try that out and get some more active users.
And then outside of that, I am like the most accessible person I think you'll find. My email is everywhere. My phone number is not really hard to get. And I'm on Twitter, and then I'm very responsive on any of these channels as long as the conversation is interesting.
Great. Thanks so much for doing this, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was a great conversation.
Absolutely. It's always fun with you, man. And Amit, you too this time.
Thanks for coming, man. This has been great.
And so, Amit, do you want to help us wrap up for where people can...
So you should be looking for us on all the standard podcasting apps. We're everywhere. We really, really, really appreciate the iTunes reviews, so please go out there and please give us a review there. And if you want to join our Slack channel, then please come to the website, ivmpodcast.com/Shunya1. There's a button over there where if you submit your email, I'll get you added into the Slack channel as soon as we can.
Please send me all the positive, negative reviews I get for this podcast.
I will do this.
Absolutely.
Yes. We love feedback.
Yes, so
absolutely.
Haptic feedback.
Haptic feedback. Great. Thanks so much, Aakrit.
Awesome, man. Fun.
All right. See you everyone next week.
Do you wish you were smarter? Well, so do we. But the next best thing?
We could make you sound smarter.
And to help you with this endeavor, we are Simplified, a podcast that attempts to break down the complex world around you with a little knowledge, a lot of poor jokes, and a ton of random trivia.
Episodes out every Monday.
On the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
See ya!
Family businesses get a bad rap. At one time, they were looked down on for getting rich, for being too ambitious. Today, they're still looked down on, but for not being ambitious enough. Not agile enough, not modern enough, too traditional in their mindset. The biggest brands and business houses in the country started out as humble family businesses. It's the way India has done business. Join Sonu Bhasin in conversation with stalwarts of Indian family businesses on the Inheritors podcast series by Bloomberg Quint. Discuss the highs and lows, the needs and pressure points of building a business legacy that spans generations.